ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Dinozor Gaming, where we learn to be a better player. Today's video is going to be a little bit different from the usual, as this past weekend was the Galactic Championships, and I was there. I had the privilege of participating in the main event all 3 days. If you guys watched the live stream of the event, you might have seen me up there a couple of times, and well, I hope you enjoyed my gameplay. That said, today we're going to be talking about my experience there, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I think about a lot of topics that people are discussing, answering a few questions that I've been receiving. And all right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So first things first, I went there with a group of friends. We went there with a group of 6 people from my local store, but also upwards of 40 to 50 people from my overall local area, people that I've met throughout the past year at so many different kind of tournaments, at PQs, you name it. And honestly, going with a big group of people like that was amazing. It was honestly one of the highlights, representing my team right here. We went there with, like I said, 6 people. Only one of us had a day 2 buy, and out of the other 5 that had to play in day 1, 4 of us actually qualified for day 2, and that speaks volume of why I think I did as well as I did, is because my local competition, the people that I play with, are phenomenal players, and us being at a good playing level like that is what helps us push together forward, and why I think that we have some of the better players there, and I honestly don't think I could have done as well as I did without them. Speaking of how well I did, like I mentioned, I played all 3 days. In the first day I went 6-1. In the second day I went 7-1, losing only to Ophir or Wu on live stream. Fantastic player, I can't say anything else about it. And in the third day, while I believe I lost to a couple of other players, which is what just barely left me out of the top 8, but I cannot complain, as all of the players that I lost to, I believe, ended up in the top 8. So I mean, hey, they're well deserved, all fantastic players. That said, I did finish 22nd, so in the top 32, and I think what's overall interesting about that is that I believe that I was the highest ranking player who had to play in day 1. By that I mean that out of the top 22, the first 21 players already had a day 2 buy. I had to claw my way out of day 1. So I think by the third day, the mental fatigue was already kicking in. But that doesn't downplay anything. They clearly played extremely well, and the wins were very well deserved. So if you did watch the live streams, I think I was on it a few times over the 3 days. It was a fantastic experience. As for those who don't know, I did end up playing a Mother Talzin deck, Mother Talzin with Red Force base. I do have a deck video on this topic in my channel if you want to see my list. Even if the video itself might be slightly updated, the link inside leads to my deck personally that I'll make changes to, and you'll always have the most updated list possible. As for what is the difference between my deck and the deck of the champion who was playing Mother Talzin, the deck lists were fairly similar, except mine had a bit more top end heavy. I had more Ruthless Raiders, Devastators, whereas they had a lot more early aggressive upgrades. I think those are just personal preference choices. Making changes like that doesn't change how the deck plays overall. It just makes you stronger into some matchups and weaker into others. I think that is more of a meta call than anything else. So as for the event itself, I have to say the venue was an excellent choice. It was so much bigger than I anticipated. It was like walking onto a military base or something along those lines. There were vendors, there were art pieces, there were artists, the developers, there were what feels like 27 bathrooms, 2 bistros to eat at, so much room to like walk around, couches where you could sit and watch the games that were being cast. If you in any fashion whatsoever enjoy Star Wars Unlimited or just Star Wars in general, going to this event would have been a life-changing experience for you, as it was for me. I enjoyed every single minute of it, and having friends there as well as new people that I met that enjoyed just hanging out will make this a weekend that is almost impossible to forget. Almost everyone I met was extremely friendly. All of the opponents that I played against, first of all, we all started by asking each other, hey, where are you from? You know, and we had some friendly chatter. And I played against people from the US, from Italy, Germany, Poland, England, everywhere around the world. It really shows that people who love this game came from all over, and it was honestly 10 out of 10 experience. I did also have the privilege of meeting a few of the developers and the designers of the game, as well as so many content creators. Not all of them, unfortunately. I would have loved to meet more, but playing in the main event for all 3 days did kind of take away a lot of my free time. So, I mean, I would love to come again next year and hopefully meet everyone I didn't get to meet, as this, after going a single year, I'm definitely going to want to go again. So I'm going to talk about some topics that have been talked about a lot and my point of view on them. So the first and obvious one is going to be the prize wall. The prize wall and the ticket situation. So I'm going to preface this by saying I did not need to stand in line for side event tickets because I did not have time for side events. I was in the main event the entire weekend. But from what I saw in day one, it was a bit rough trying to get your tickets, but it was fairly quickly handled by the staff using other methods. Yeah, they might have run out of physical tickets, but they were either printing new ones or finding different ways to get people going. So even my friends who were there for just side events didn't complain too much about it. They did have a great time. They managed to farm all the tickets that they wanted to get whatever they wanted from the prize wall. And as for the prize wall, again, I didn't really have much access to the prize wall itself until the last day, as anyone who was in the main event did not get their tickets until they were essentially dropping out of the tournament. That makes sense because the rewards were cumulative, right? So by the time I did drop out of the main event, I did get my tickets. I got enough to get at least a few things, but I believe a bit less than I would have anticipated, considering that I had no other time to grind any other side events. I had enough to get the Luke Invader showcase that everybody wanted, but it would have been nice to have just a little bit more to get some other small stuff. But honestly, that is such a minor nitpick that I will probably forget about it by next week. So I think the prize wall situation was pretty decent. Yes, of course, a lot of things were sold out by day 3, but luckily for me, since I was in the main event, they had held a few things on the side for us, knowing that we won't get our tickets until the end. So we were able to skip the line sort of and use our tickets as soon as we got them, which would have made sense because by the time I was kicked out of the event, the prize wall was almost entirely sold out. The lineup was like 3 hours long, and I would not be able to spend my tickets at all otherwise. So now for kind of the elephant in the room, and that's going to be about my thoughts on any cards that need to be suspended and on Hantu or other cards that people are believing that are kind of overrepresented. So first, let's talk about Hantu Blue. Hantu Blue was around 15% of the field, I believe. And honestly, considering how many of them there were, only a couple of them made it to the top. That really shows that while it is a powerful deck, I don't think that it's ban-worthy, at least not the leader. Yes, it's strong. Yes, it's good. And it's okay for cards to be good. But what makes Hantu Blue so good is, of course, Force Throw. And honestly, being a good leader on top of having access to what I believe is probably the strongest card in the game is what makes Hantu Blue so oppressive. And while it might not be the strongest deck out there, it is frustrating not that it is kind of a gatekeeper deck. If your deck isn't able to keep up with Hantu or outlast it in any way, you just kind of can't play it in the meta. So I think that's more in line with what Force Throw does, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think Hantu Blue is fine. Just in general, Red-Blue Hero has been very, very strong this set for a lot of different factors. But I think the main offender is Force Throw. So let's talk about Force Throw. I think there's two ways to really talk about it, but first let's just mention out of the gate that a vast majority of the decks at the Galactic Qualifier were running Force Throw, because a lot of them realized that that is what the field is going to look like, and that is what they went with. So obviously, only 6 out of the 8 top decks were a Force Throw deck. The other 2 were, we had a Vader Yellow and an Odd Han. It would be strange to run Force Throw in yellow decks like that. But otherwise, any deck that was able to play it did. And So there's two ways to talk about force throw. There's the offensive way to use it and the defensive way. And in the offensive way is the way the card has been used for most of the game's lifespan, and that is to target your opponent, make them discard a card, and deal damage to one of their unit, hopefully if you have a force unit. Well, that's always been a very strong effect, and it's even stronger now that everybody has access to so many force units. And I think that this is one of the more fair applications of the card. Yes, it is strong, but once again, it's okay for cards to be strong. It wasn't broken up until now, but I think one of the main disadvantages, not disadvantages, but one of the main things that is making force throw so good is the fact that there isn't a lot of card draw in this game, and I believe that is by design. So the fact that your opponent is able to discard a card from your hand and deal some damage, even if it's only 1 or 2 damage, they're kind of breaking even. They're only spending 1. You both players are losing a card, potentially dealing some damage. And since most decks cannot draw cards more than the basic 2 per turn, you'll very often be stuck in a position where you'll have no cards left in hand because of force throw. So you're kind of relying on having other ways to spend your resources. Hopefully you'll have a smuggle or 2. And if your deck is playing colors that don't have access to good smuggle cards, don't have access to good card draw, well, I believe that force throw just makes it so you're going to have a bad time. However, the defensive aspect of force throw, it's not actually defensive, it's more of like you're targeting yourself with force throw, is an application that hasn't been used too much in the first year of this game's life. That is because, once again, a lack of card draw. However, we've seen that the new red-blue hero decks, essentially aggression, vigilance, heroism decks like Hantu Blue, Yoda Red, or anything of the sort, have access to so much card draw now. I think between Kiari Mundi, Yoda, sometimes a big Obi-Wan, they draw so many cards that using force throw on yourself kind of negates the disadvantage of having to spend 2 cards to kill 1. And that itself is extremely powerful. Most of the games that I lost this weekend to red-blue hero decks were because as soon as I flipped my leader, they were able to force throw themselves, discard a Crate Dragon or a Chewbacca, and just one-shot my leader for 1 cost. And whether that's fair or not is a feels bad moment. It does suck to have your leader flip out and immediately die for 1. It is an unfortunate situation, and I think once again the main culprit here is the card draw aspect. I think either the card draw needs to be reined down for these decks, or more realistically what would be better is to have more card draw just across the field. I'm not saying that everyone should be running around with 10 cards in hand, but every deck should have access to at least 1 or 2 cards to replenish their hand. I think that would kind of fix the situation on itself. As for whether I think force throw will be suspended, it's so hard to say. We know for sure that it won't be suspended this week. We have Gen Con coming around, and I'm sure the developers and designers are too busy going from the GC to Gen Con. So if anything, we might hear about something next week. I don't think it needs to be banned, but I do think that if it were suspended, if it were to be suspended, it would cause such a dramatic, huge meta shift that it would be like playing a whole new game. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially considering we had access to Legends of the Force cards about a month early. So this is going to feel like one of the longest sets in the game. So if we do get a force throw suspension in about a month or in a couple of weeks, cutting the set in half in terms of what the meta is going to look like is going to breathe a breath of fresh air into the game, and honestly make it so people will need to reevaluate everything in time for the PQ season. Is that a good thing? For me it is. At least I believe it is, because I always love trying to discover the meta, trying to see what deck works, but I can also empathize with people who just built a deck and really like force throw and don't want it gone. So next topic we're going to be talking about is going to be tournament prep and tricks, things I did to keep my head in the game this weekend. One of the more common questions I was asked. So let's put aside the cheesy common things like make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating enough. I think that's fairly obvious. Doesn't make it less important. But more than that, I think it's important to keep your mental state in a good place. And what I mean by that is if you're winning nonstop, of course you're going to be happy, of course you're going to be in a good state. But when you drop a few games or when you hear about your friends losing, it does kind of sour your mood. And anytime that you walk into a game where your mind is still stuck on the last one, you're almost guaranteed to make mistakes. So I think one of the more important things is in between every round, you need to do something to reset yourself. For me, that was either walking around, meeting up with my friends, talking about their day, maybe going to grab a bite to eat, or sometimes when I felt myself getting a bit tilted because of a loss, I would put on my headphones, just go outside, walk around with some music that I really enjoyed. That way, when I get into the next game, I felt fresh. I felt like, okay, this is brand new, let's get to it. As for going back next year, I would love to go back. Of course, it's going to be pretty different because unlike this year, it's not going to be open to everybody. There will, I believe I heard that there's going to be a Friday open, which kind of feels like it's going to be the same as this year, except instead of getting an automatic invite only for winning PQs, there's going to be a point system that you'll be able to earn. Winning a PQ gives you 100 points, which is just enough to qualify already, but you'll have other ways, just topping at PQs or at sectionals, regionals. So I think the main thing that's going to affect whether I'll be going back next year is going to be if I have enough points. I don't know if I earned any this weekend. There are no details on that just yet, but hopefully I will, as I believe the top 16 players were automatically qualified for next year, so top 32 should at least get some points. As for what I think about the point system in general, I think it is a great idea. I think that having something to achieve throughout the year in order to qualify or get bonuses at the Galactic Championship of next year is a great idea. But the negative aspect of this is that a lot of areas, including mine, don't have access to easy PQs. And what I mean by that, the best example for that is for this set, for Legends of the Force, my local area doesn't have any PQs whatsoever. So if I want to compete, if I want to earn points, I'm going to need to drive 6 hours at the very least in any direction, because there are some in all directions, but they're all 6 hours away. It's a little frustrating because it's not like I'm living in the middle of nowhere. We live in a big city. We had a big showing at the Galactics, and yet despite that, for some reason, we don't have any planetary qualifiers. I think that pretty much sums up my experience. I could mention a few of the amazing, surprising top decks that I saw there. I think everybody saw the Kylo decks. Kylo Red, I played against a few of them. I was lucky enough in that my deck had quite the advantage against them, because otherwise that deck looks terrifying to play against. I played against a Kazuda Red that was extremely skilled. I played against some other space decks. I mean, in the top, we even had an Odd Han deck, a deck that nobody expected to make that far. But there were so many unique decks. There was even some Chancellor Palpatine decks on day 3. Really goes to show that in this game, it's less about what is meta, and it's more about how well can you make a deck, how well can you pilot a deck. And that is so important. And I think how you play the deck is more important than playing the absolute best one. On that, honestly, just gonna show my swag that I got this weekend. Of course, made it to top 32 just to add a little bit of credibility right there. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please don't hesitate to do so. And if you guys have any kind of requests for what content you would love to see, I would love to hear it from you. Otherwise, we will be going back to doing all sorts of deck techs and gameplay videos. And honestly, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I always appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.